Hello, and a massive warm welcome to you. You know where you are. It's the Soul Sync podcast with me, Jason Paul. Now, if you're clicking on this podcast for the very first time, then a big welcome to you. If you're wondering what the Soul Sync is all about, well, let me tell you. We ask the questions here that matter to do with all things pertaining to the spirit world, spirituality, the universe, energy, healing. Honestly, the list really is endless, but it's all designed to nourish your soul and illuminate your path forward. Now, in this week's episode, I'm talking to the incredible Minister Val Williams, who is a beacon in the world of mediumship with a journey that spans a remarkable 44 years. Val is an international medium and course organiser at the prestigious Findlay College, and Val's story is nothing short of captivating. At the age of 33, Val found her sanctuary in a spiritualist church, igniting a journey filled with joy, purpose and unwavering commitment. Her path meandered through workshops, classes and the challenge of bringing the truths of the spirit world to a broader audience. This episode really is your backstage pass into the highs, lows and unexpected turns of Val's journey, and we'll be gaining insights from someone who has provided comfort, emotional closure and tangible proofs of survival to hundreds, if not thousands of souls seeking connection with their departed loved ones. Val's experiences have taken her across borders, transcending language barriers and proving that the language of love is universal. But the story doesn't end there. Val's dedication to mediumship led her to establish the Val Williams Academy for Mediums in 2020. She's fulfilling Gordon Higginson's prophecy, becoming the medium's medium. Today, Val shares her profound experiences, the challenges of her pathway, and the invaluable lessons learned during her decades-long commitment to mediumship. So, whether you're a seasoned medium or a curious soul, this episode promises to be both touching and insightful. Enjoy! So, Val, a very big warm welcome to the Soul Sync podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Now, that was quite the introduction, and I know that we have so much to pack into this hour because you've got the most interesting story, and all 44 years. We're never going to unpack all of that, Val. But first of all, well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
So I want to dive straight in and ask you about your childhood, because you experienced voices when you was very, very young, but then it wasn't till the age of 33 that you first walked into a spiritualist church. So it sounds like you had a gift all along, but it was only maybe acted on. Tell us a bit about your story, Val.
Okay, so when I was a little girl, it would be things like when I was 3 or 4, I said to a lady once, "Why do you come to my house to see my mummy when she doesn't like you very much?" And my mother slapped me across the face. And the reason she slapped me, because I was saying exactly what she was thinking at the time. So obviously that was my fault. And there were lots of little incidences like this. And then I remember when I was 9, I was walking down the street to school, and a little girl's voice in my head, which was different to my voice, was counting all the paving slabs. So the next day I thought, well, I'm going to fool you because I'm going to go down another street tomorrow. So, of course, it continued. And the best way I could, I tried to shut it out, because my mother would say things like, "You'll end up in a mental home if you behave like this, dear. You can't say those things, dear." There was always a dear attached to it, which didn't feel very nice. And then when I was in my teens, there were lots of separate incidences. And by then we had a television, because people didn't have televisions in my childhood. And I remember there being programs on the television, and somebody would come on and say, "Oh, my daughter's gone missing." And it would be a father, and he would be crying. And my voice would say, "Well, yes, because you've killed him." So that's not a nice thing for a teenage girl to have. And then when I was 16, my mother called me in the room and she said, "I need to tell you that your cousin Edith has died." And Edith was 18. And my voice, the male voice that I've had all my life, said, and her father did it. And it was only after that I was told she'd been sexually abused by her father from the age of 9. She'd had a baby to him at 12, which I knew none of this. I think she had an abortion at 14 and she was strangled at 18. And it took many years, and I've just written my second book, and the whole story is actually in there, because it was heartrending to think of this. She was a very frail, little, delicate girl, and we didn't know, and she was one of 4 sisters, and that level of abuse was happening all her childhood. And that my voice said that. And then it took some years, I think nearly 20 years altogether, for me to get absolute categorical proof from spirit that, yes, her father had done it. And an interesting little, in the interim then, which my mother told me when the whole story came out, that my mother and my aunt and uncle, Edith's parents, after she died, they all went to Fleetwood Spiritualist Church, and I'd never heard of a Spiritualist church. I didn't know about things like that. And apparently there was a medium mid-message, and he suddenly swung round to my mother and he said, "You will get the answer when the snow thaws." And then he just carried on. And I found out years later it was Albert Best, and Albert Best was the first tutor to book me to work for him at the Findlay College in 1986. So how amazing. And then the day, and so I gathered information, and then one day I saw a psychic in Fleetwood, and she gave me so much evidence. And I went in my mother's shop and I said, "Did you know your brother killed his own daughter?" And she said, "Oh, Valerie, the snow is thawing." I said, "Did you just hear me?" And then she told me the story, and it was we could hear it plopping down the drain at the time, plop, plop, plop. But that had come straight out of her subconscious mind for 15 years before. But there was still no conversation that there'd been any spiritualism or mediums in my family. It was only when I was about 36, I think, and I was working at the Spiritualist churches, and my mother phoned and said, "Well, it may interest you to know your mother and your grandmother and great-grandmother were both mediums."
Wow.
And my grandmother used to do services at Bread Street Spiritualist Church in Penzance.
How crazy, but it took you all those years to know that.
That's not fair, is it? To get
No.
your mid-30s and had that going on. And just a little aside, I was doing a service there one year, and my grandmother appeared. And I was mid-message to a lady, and I said, "Why has my grandmother come to talk to you?" And she said, "Well, who is your grandmother, dear?" I said, "Edith Ormerod. She had the shop, the haberdashery shop on Causeway." And she said, "Oh, I used to go in every Saturday morning and we'd have a half-hour chat." I said, "Well, tell her to come and talk to me next time, not to you." But that was marvellous. Yeah.
What a story. And I think a lot with your childhood as well. That sounds really traumatic to experience that.
And when I asked my grandmother, she was 84, I said to her, "Did you know that your son killed his own daughter?" And she looked at me and said, "Valerie, I've always known." So very, very sad.
When you started connecting with the spirit world, did you get answers to a lot of those things that happened back when you was younger, or
not really? No. And the only way that spirit carried on, I know now, letting me know they were there, is that I'm very, very passionate about quizzes on the television, but I haven't got the intellect to answer most of the questions. But very often I would say the answer 1 second before the person gave the answer. So it was only years later when I had mediumship that I knew that was somehow spirit sending that thought of that answer, of which I would have had no knowledge whatsoever. I just don't have the intelligence or the intellect for it.
How fascinating. So you started working in the Spiritualist churches, and how did you kind of build up your mediumship? How long was it taking until you started thinking, "Right, I'm going to read for people now"?
No, it didn't. It didn't. I went to a very strange psychic who actually was a very good medium, but she didn't want to say. And at the end of her reading, she said, "Did you want to ask something?" So I said, "I'd like to know what happened to my cousin Edith. Where is she now?" "Oh, my dear, she's wandering around in the spirit world." I thought, well, after the life she's had and now she's lost. So I said, well, what can I do to help her? And she said, go in a church and pray for her. Well, I stopped believing in the God I grew up with in Christianity when I was 13, because all this mediumship was happening and people told me I was telling lies. And so I said, well, my friend goes to this funny place where she says to talk to dead people. Do you think I could go there? So still, I had no clue whatsoever. And I went on a Monday afternoon, Fleetwood Church, and the medium, and Mr. Laird, stood in front of me and he said, in 2 years, you will be standing here. And I thought that was so silly. Anyway, it happened before that. And then I started going Tuesday nights. And in those days, I could sit and I just sat literally with pen and paper while a medium was working for an hour. I just used to write things down. No idea what I was doing. And then they would say, oh, now, thank you to the medium. Now it's open circle. And there'd be about probably 120 people in most Tuesday nights.
Wow.
Very popular there. And I would just get up with my pad and I'd say, there's a man called John. And he said he's a window cleaner, and he went up his ladder and his foot slipped and he fell backwards, cracked his head, broke his neck, and he died. And he wants Margaret to know he's all right. And he's saying December the 10th. And this one woman said, but that's my husband. And that birthday is correct. And that is my name. And I knew nothing. So I didn't have any responsibility to that, because I didn't know you should have. It was just this building where people talk like this to other people. I didn't know about the SNU. I didn't know about Gordon Higginson, who was head of it at the time. I didn't know there was a proper religious organisation, because I was told nothing.
And I think we got to remember as well that we're now, that was back when probably you'd walk into a local library and ask for a book on mediumship and they'd look at you quite blankly.
Yes, I think they would have done. Yeah, I think they would. But yeah, and then I started. I only read 1 or 2 books, and I remember reading about Ena Twig, and she was fabulous, and then Estelle Roberts.
Oh, yes.
And after that, Estelle Roberts, both of them actually just blew my mind. And then I read about a medium called Queenie Nixon. I don't know if you'd have even heard of her.
No, I haven't heard of her. No.
She was a genuine transfiguration medium. And I'd sort of heard about it. And towards the end of her life, sadly, she was ill and she did one demonstration where it wasn't good. And they put out in national newspapers that she was a fake, and she wasn't. So I heard she was coming to my church. And I know I saw materialization that night. I know it in Fleetwood Church, because this little tiny lady was there, and to the side was this man I thought was about 7 foot tall. And he was speaking to us, and she was sitting there. And then I saw the other side, a nun, and she talked to us, and the medium was still there. So at the end of it, I thought, oh, it's a bit silly. Why do you get a man to stand on a chair? Because I was very, I think everybody should approach mediumship as much as they can with a questioning mind. I really do. Because otherwise they can get sucked in. So I had that. And then I saw her again in Preston Church. And the build-up, the mask of ectoplasm, the faces that moulded was exquisite. And it was having seen people like that and having been in a genuine trumpet seance with a trumpet coming at my face there and a man's voice coming out that made me want to do this, to do it properly, to understand the reasons why we should be mediums and respect people. So I came up, if you like, the old-fashioned way. And I
What
won't tell
was
you.
the old-fashioned way, in essence? What did you do? Because I'll tell you the reason I'm asking the question. When I want to learn about mediumship, I'm overwhelmed, Val, with the amount of resources, things at the end of our fingertips, whereas that you can end up bouncing around. What was the way you learned?
Um, I went to a lot of circles and I never saw such garbage in my life. And I've even maybe today, I don't know, but some people can be fabulous working mediums, but no good at running circles. So
Hmm.
we sat in two or three circles, and I said to my friend, I can't do this anymore. It's horrible. And one medium had me in her circle because I had a reputation quite quickly of being a good medium. Word goes round, you don't have to advertise. And this woman said to me, nobody's ever given me my mother, but you will, I know. And it was a horrible circle. There was a lady faking trance and flinging her arms about. And considering I knew nothing, I knew that wasn't real, you see. And so this was right at the beginning. This is why when I saw these things that were real and genuine, wow. So I just wanted to do it properly. So I said to my friend, why don't you and I just sit together with spirit? And the old fashioned way was to sit and just say, I'd like to serve spirit. Please, can you help me unfold my gifts? As simple as that. Not, I don't like my job, and I think I like to do mediumship. So I'll get some cards printed and I'll charge £50 to start with, and then I'll put it up after a few weeks. There was no money paid in those days at all. The first reading,
Hmm.
the first sitting I did,
What was
and
it you said? I'd like to serve spirit. Please help guide me. That simple.
that's it.
Oh.
And help me unfold my gifts, because we don't know none of us know what we're capable of. I've just done a workshop that talks about your potential. And spirit will show you as you're going through and as your gifts are unfolding. They perhaps have you doing healing for somebody, and there's an instant cure of something. Or they'll have you giving a message to somebody, and it's as accurate as that first one I gave. But that didn't mean I was a full-blown medium because I'd given that message. And I honestly think sometimes that's the mistake people make. And that
Hmm.
puts pressure on themselves. Where what spirits have said, look, this is your potential. Now, would you like us to show you the techniques and the ways of working and the ways of understanding? Because when I first started, apparently I just went straight into the power of spirit, became the spirit person, and taught. And Gordon Higginson did an assessment for me in 1984, and he told me that. And I said, well, doesn't everybody do that? I said, of course not, dear. So over a period of years, I've had to sort of unravel what I did to understand whether I'm hearing, seeing, sensing, knowing, being,
Hmm.
all those things, so that I can help other people to understand their gifts. And that to me is a most exciting and fascinating thing, to see somebody who doesn't know that they've any possibility at all, but they want to know if they can. Just get the first words out from spirit.
You've just so dovetailed this really nicely and naturally onto teaching and being the work that you do in that sphere. How do you identify someone? It's hard enough to be a medium and to hear for spirit. How do you do that with your students? What is your technique for trying
Well,
to coax that out of people? Because that must be difficult.
yes, it is. And I just had an occasion recently, and when I was at the college, and there was a young boy came with his mum from another country, adorable young man, and he'd never done anything. And after a day or so, my colleague said, "This boy's so out of his depth. What shall I do?" I said, "Go back to the old ways. Give him a piece of give him an article, get somebody, to give him an article, and then him just to say whatever jumps into his mind. That's the start." And at the end of that session, he'd actually got his first pieces of information, and his mum and he hugged on the lawn at the college, and it was beautiful. And she's now on my mentoring course, which is lovely. But to see somebody's first steps, it's just beautiful. And then you've got people who they get things, but they don't know how they're getting it, so they think they're not good enough. So when I have people say on screen or in front of me, sometimes if they're going to a meditation, I leave them for a while. Spirit link me in, it's like zooming onto the energy. So I did a workshop last night, and for 4 of them, I was able to validate something that's happening with their mediumship. And none of that has been trained. Spirit do it on the spot. I turn up for workshops, I haven't a clue what I'm going to do. And they leave me. And they've done that from the very first workshop I ever did, which has been fabulous for me.
It sounds like you connect to the spirit world very easy. Is it just literally like flicking a switch for you?
That's exactly my wording, because I've never opened chakras or gone through a great process. What I have is a disciplined approach, because I used to have spirit talking to me. I remember once I was on a Sea Cadet bus. I used to train Sea Cadets.
Oh, I could imagine you doing that, actually, Val.
Up and down from an arm. And they were the young ones, 7 to 10-year-olds. And we were on a bus once with 52 of these kids and my friend and my now ex-husband. And I wrote poetry for 8 hours. And when I got back, I was so angry. I said, how dare you invade my life like this? I don't want any more to do with you. And then I thought, oh, but I'm going to miss out if I do that. So what I said, and I do advise people to do this in a disciplined way, your own disciplines, not let other people tell you what to do. Find what works for you when you do workshops and when you do your development. And what I used to say is 9 o'clock every night, I'll sit for half an hour with pen and paper, and whatever you want to tell me, I'll write down. But the rest of the time, I don't want to be bothered. And I think we've got to think of mental health, and more so than ever before, because I've actually been with people when they don't shut down at all. It's like flying messages coming in, they say. Spirits are talking to me all day and night. Well, yeah, you wouldn't let somebody today sit in the back of your car 11 o'clock at night, would you? That's it. So, to keep your mental health in order and to know I've put myself into that disciplined space and now I'm offering myself to spirit, they will appreciate and respect me, meaning anybody, and we can work together that way. So
I kind of wish I could just have them talking to me all the time at the start of a switch. I
call it that because when I finish, I've got a reading at 10 o'clock tonight. So I'll switch off for about 55 minutes and 5.
Don't stop, Val. You're like a machine.
I know.
What is your secret to living such a busy life?
Don't you tell anybody my age. Don't you give my secrets away.
Oh, no, I won't be giving your secrets away. But
I just think it's loving what you do. I was in a very, very toxic relationship. I was married to a very violent schizophrenic. I chose to stay for 20 years to hope to give my son a better life. And then spirit just maneuvered, led, and I decided in 1989 I didn't want ever another relationship, and I'd be married to spirit. And so but even I need days off to go shopping and nights to go to shows. I was at 2 shows in the last 5 days. And there are times it's lovely to switch off. So as you know, I'm just back from 2 weeks in Kenya. And I do 1 reading when I go there, 1 sitting, which is for the friend I stay with. But other than that, I don't work. I'm not switched on. I don't walk around. People say, oh, can you just tell me this about this? I say, terribly sorry, no. The switch is off.
Yeah, and I think you have to be disciplined with that, because I think you can run yourself into the ground with this, because I'm guessing you could probably book yourself up with readings from 8 in the morning till 10 at night every night, and there still not be a shortage of people wanting a reading.
And I don't do that. No.
Yeah.
No, and what many years ago, I used to go to Denmark twice a year to work, and I remember the lady saying, "There's so many people wanting more readings now." I said, well, look, I know somebody in England who tells me just 16 a day. I said, I will do 5 maximum. Do you want to get him over? And she said, absolutely not. We want your standard. So you have to state your case. You have to know yourself how much you can be used. In the same way, I've heard mediums say that when they work abroad, suddenly the host will say, oh, can you give us all messages now? Well, somebody tried that on me once in Kenya, and her husband wasn't even interested in the subject, and we were at dinner. So I just looked at him and I said, he was a surgeon. I said, sir, do you have a scalpel in your top pocket? And he said, no. And I looked at the lady, I said, and I'm sorry, I don't give messages at dinner parties.
Yeah, and I think, well done for respecting that. That's probably why you've done it so long.
You've got to respect yourself, because the only thing I ever said to Spirit, I want to be the best channel for your work that I can be. Nobody's perfect. There's no perfect message. There's no real science behind it that the medium is ever going to fully understand. You just work to the best of your ability.
I guess in a way that's why it's so hard to train people, because there's not an exact science to it. I even think how long it's taken me to work out what sitting in the power is. I thought I should be sitting on a battery at the beginning, Val.
Yeah. A lady in Canada asked me that. I'm going to Canada in a couple of months to work. And she said to me, I keep hearing everybody talking about sitting in the power. Now, there was a time that some tutors were doing it, but literally 6 and 8 hours. That's not helping. And that had to be stopped. Because, for example, when I first went to the college, 1984, there were no workshops. There were just tutors telling us what they did. So we built it up through meditation, listening to them, our own hopes and dreams that we've taken with us. There was no outlet for that psychic faculty.
That's so interesting. I didn't realise the college was like. You would think the word college, you would just imagine it was always tutors.
No, it wasn't the college then. It was Stansted Hall, left by the wonderful Arthur Findlay for us. It was very, very different. And then I can remember, I'm not quite sure the year, maybe somewhere like 86, 87, the word workshop started coming in, and it got in England, a lot of the old mediums resisted. This is just an Americanism. This is just coming in from Australia. Because it's nice to hear other people's stories. But then I used to think, but I'd like to do that. And I'd like to help Spirit that way. And I'd like to be
you'd almost sit there idolising them, but with no idea as to how they'd even got there.
Well, unfortunately, I never idolised anybody because my mother brought me up not to. So that was hard for me. But it was fascinating to listen to. And, the sort of people who inspired me when I started there was a man, and I wish I could remember his name. He had no teeth. He used to wear cowboy boots. He was a little thin thing, cowboy boots and a lariat. And he used to come to the church with his wife, and he had no ability to read or write at all. He was totally literate. And he would stand as the medium, and he opened his mouth to give a prayer, and it stroked your soul. In essence, it was so beautiful.
Wow.
And then he'd give the philosophical talk, and it would reach somewhere deep in you. And so then you think, well, where did he get that from if he can't read or write? You see?
Yes.
But it had to have come from Spirit. And there was a lady there also, and she was the same. She couldn't read or write. But you were so, in those days, you were so aware of the interaction of the spirit coming very, very close and blending with the medium. And then, unfortunately, the SNU had to make rules. They didn't really have any choice because so many people were faking trance. They closed their eyes and talk and pretend they were in trance. And especially when it started to be paid for, then we suddenly had trance mediums all over. And can I tell you my naughty joke?
We love that. Yes, please. The more the merrier.
Somebody once said to me, what's the difference between what you did tonight and what that man's doing next week? I said, £8. So she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I've just done a demonstration of mediumship, £2, and he's doing trance next week, £10. So the difference is £8. And trance to me is so precious. I've seen it for real. I've seen it faked. I've seen it where the medium is self-deluded. I've seen it all. And when it's right, it's so beautiful.
Have you ever done trance work yourself?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
Yeah,
I don't do it much. Since my life changed, and since 1989, I haven't had an actual circle to sit. I had 4 years, and during those 4 years, my trance mediumship developed, my physical mediumship developed, but there's been nothing apart from practice sessions since then. And I did have the gift of genuine transfiguration, which means everybody in the room sees the same face. So yes, I had that.
Wow.
Every week, they used to record the trance sessions, and I didn't like it. I really didn't.
Why not?
No, it just feels strange and uncomfortable. And because I'd seen faking, I thought, how will people know I'm faking it or not, you see? So it's a difficulty. But then we tested it a few times. And I remember I once said to my group, I've asked a lady to come next week. And they said, you don't like people coming? I said, oh, no, I don't know why I've asked to come. So I was very defensive. So anyway, this lady, Alice Oates, I think she was called. She was a very long-term spirit. She was much older than me. And she came, and I was told afterwards that her son, who was, I think, 21, he transfigured. And apparently when he comes, he always comes crying. I must have been in the unconscious state because I don't remember any of that.
Wow.
And I usually remember what was said. And whatever was said to her, we talked afterwards, and the sister said, we don't know why she wanted you to come tonight, because she didn't like people coming. And this lady said, it was a birthday gift for me. She said, it's my birthday today. And none of us knew that. So little things like that encouraged us to carry on. And my sitters, I had one friend who gave her all, and 4 old ladies who gave their all. It's all recorded. We've got recordings, but I got rid of a lot. And I've got lots of scripts written down that one day maybe I'll get time to even read. But there were special times. And let me just say that the very precious things that you'll ever do when you're developing like that, just giving an hour and a half to spirit, nobody will ever see. They're just very precious.
Yes. To even have a trance experience must be the most surreal feeling. I can't imagine it. I can only hope that one day maybe I do.
I hope you do. The last, and I can prove this, so I'd like to tell a true story in
yes,
modern
please.
ways it can be proved. I was at the college. I don't know if it's 2 years ago, if it was just pre-COVID. I've no concept of time anymore.
Oh, me neither.
Good. And so I did a trance evening. I never know at the beginning of the week whether I'll do it or not. And so I always put on the programme for one evening, wait and see, and then Spirit tell me what I have to do. And so anyway, I did, and I sat for trance, and there was a lovely lady, an older lady who is a medium. And there was also a very young lady who's a fabulous medium now. And apparently during it, I can remember a man coming from spirit. I'd done some speaking and connected with people. And then I can remember a man coming, and he told me who he wanted to talk to. And apparently she was on the front row. And I said, no, I don't think you belong to her. I said, because your accent's wrong. And then I just said to myself, Valerie, get out of your own way. And the next thing, he'd come forward. And again, I might have heard while he was speaking what was said, but I don't remember any of it now. And afterwards, when it was all over, and we were having a discussion. It's always good to have a discussion. The lady who'd had the message said, "That was my father speaking in his own voice." I said, "Don't be ridiculous." And his accent's from the northeast of England. That would be
Wow.
the hardest accent ever. If I was to try and mimic it, I can't do it. And the young lady, who's now an excellent medium, came down and she said, "Well, that was a male voice and it was the accent from my area."
Wow.
But I can't say, this is the thing about potential. I could not then say, "I'll take a booking somewhere in 2 years' time and I'll do that again." And I think this is where mediums, sometimes they think, "That's it. I'm at the end of the road. I'll be able to do that all the time." I just never know.
I suppose to put the pressure, I think your approach is right though, because to put that pressure on yourself, I think that is one of the hardest things I've learned about mediumship is your brain getting in the way with this ego, kind of say, "Oh, it has to be right." Oh, and then you go into thinking mode. And I think it's that pressure of the no or it not working, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I've done whole lectures on the word no. I've done whole workshops.
Oh,
And
I need to get you into my company. So
okay,
you could train my salespeople. No is not a no for today.
no. And the thing is, if somebody says no, what I say, you say no to this information, and I joke because I've got a funny sense, and I say, "Let me just ask why this spirit person's telling lies." And then I say, "No, I don't mean that. But you've got to relax the situation." And then I go back to spirit, and I have one expression now. I think it should be planted on my grave somehow. If you are genuinely in the energy, in the power of spirit, whatever you receive will always be right. Always.
Do you know what? I think that's such a profound thing you've just said there, because straight away, that's all the pressure removed. The only thing you need to worry about, well, not even worry about, you just need to feel the spirit. If you can feel them, you're always right.
Yes, but
We should have that in a car sticker, Val. That's so profound.
I know, but you can translate something wrong.
Mm.
You see, we don't realize we're translating a lot of it unless we're told word by word by word. We're translating through our senses, through something we've experienced, through something we've observed sometimes. So the messages come in sometimes so very, very fast. We can hold them and bring them back out of our subconscious mind. But if we're in it and we're in the flow, so you might have a man and he might say his father, etc. And you say, "Oh, he was a painter and decorator for his living." No. And you say, "Well, yes, but I can smell paint." Well, he wasn't a painter and decorator, So then I would say, "Let me just go back and verify what he's saying." And I'd go back and all I would have had was the smell of paint. And I may have assumed he was a painter and decorator. And then I might take a minute to say to the man, "Why are you talking about paint?" And it might be something like, to his daughter who's getting the message, is it correct you've got a son, and has he taken up painting as a hobby? Because all you had was the smell of paint. And that's verifying that Dad's there watching over this situation as well.
And I guess the thing you have to take into account with this is every single spirit person really is an individual. And what they're going to say. And I think sometimes I found in my mediumship, and I know, other people who are, is there a similar level? I think it's all perception, isn't it? But we'll get a no, and then it completely throws me off. I feel like but it's that ability to, kind of go back and ask these questions, and it must be quite difficult at times because you'll get something. And how do you know how to interpret that? Because a paint could mean anything.
Exactly. So this is where, and I don't want to give all my tips away, but I will because they were given to me from spirit. So anybody who's watching this in the future, My guides gave me a tip some years ago, and it works if people will stick to it as a discipline. So we often feel the energy of spirit around us, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Know that somebody's there trying to get a communication through. So what I get my students to do, because sometimes I'm aware that their energy is very scattered. It feels like somebody's way over there throwing information mind to mind. So I say, I need you to ask the spirit person, so it is a person, not just an energy, to come and stand directly behind you. And I watch the energies and I sense them. And I say, now tell me when they're there. And they say, oh, yes, I can feel this man. And then I say, right, just imagine it. Well, imagine, feel it, experience it. It can feel like imagination. Feel yourself going back into that person's energy. And then it feels like you're wrapping their energy around like you put a coat on. And this is what I did from the beginning without knowing I was doing it, you see. I became that energy. And then you can actually feel sometimes the aches, the pains. You can feel the way the mind works. You might be an old man in a bed, 93, had a stroke, blind in one eye, can't speak now. And you just interpret and translate that. And then people get into the message and and then they suddenly go, I've lost it. And I say, no, you haven't lost it. You've come out of the power.
Why do people come out of the power? Why is that happening?
Well, a few things. So if I was giving you a message and you weren't answering me, I'd be more interested in your response than staying with this person. And the secret is to stay in the energy and be aware of the response as well, and take the response and take it back to the spirit person.
Yes, you're with the spirit, because this is where I go wrong. Definitely, I'm paying more attention to the person in front of me.
Yes, and exactly. And then when I have a checklist apparently. And one of the things is, do not get caught up in the client's expectations or recipient's expectations. And there was an Italian professor lady, an older lady, came to the college, and apparently there's 10 things I say constantly. And one of them is this, about the expectations of the clients. And when I put people in twos, then I watch their energy from a spiritual perspective. And I'll suddenly cross the room and I'll say, sit back in your chair. You've come out of the power because you're not getting the response you want from your sitter. Go back into the power with the spirit person. Stay in that energy and make sure your sitter says yes, no, or I don't know. Because that keeps you in the energy then.
Wow, this is wonderful. I want to come onto one of your courses. This sounds just wonderful, the way of teaching it. It's very concise. It's very, I like that. It sounds like the Val Williams experience sounds amazing.
Well, I think it is. And it's all spirit taught and it's all individual. And the way I put it in very simplistic terms is, you, the medium, are the telephone operator. Somebody's in Australia and they're trying to tell you they want to talk to somebody in a room of 100 people. So they're going to give information about themselves. And it was when I came into this, it was so easy in a way, because they'd say, I've got this little old lady with bandy legs. She's got her hair up at the back of her head. She's got a big apron and it wraps round. And then there'd be Grandad with his flat cap and his cigarette over his ear. And it's fascinating in today's society. Those people don't exist. I am of a certain age. We get a certain age of people on all our seminars. There's not one of us looks the same. We may all be grandmas. We don't look the same. We don't have the same hairstyles. We don't wear the same clothes. So mediums today have to work harder to get the individual truth and proof.
Well, you're right, because it's a very, very different world to back then. I'm guessing that's always testing your mediumship, because there's always new, we're evolving at such a pace. I guess Absolutely.
And culturally, You know, I said to a young man the other day on the screen, and I said, when I first went to America in 1980, I didn't really know or believe that people had fully fitted kitchens because we didn't in England. I said, but we'd seen it even from the 1950s on television in America. So to go there and see that that was real and true was interesting. And I think television technology, it's opened up our minds to lots of different cultures. But when mediums are plodding, like going through treacle or syrup sometimes, trying to get information, instead of panicking, they sometimes get a sort of a memory or something that just says, oh, I can smell a certain something and it smells like apple pie, but there's something different. Well, when I first went to the States, I found out all Americans put usually currants in or sultanas, but they put cinnamon in apple pie. So I was a bit shocked about this. And that's very different to a British apple pie. So
oh, yes.
Yes. And then I had apple cake in Amsterdam. That's different again. So most countries have a similar type of food, either rice, pasta, potato, something. So to start experiencing it yourself in physical life is something I say, use that as an observation technique. And then when a spirit person comes, you'll be able to think, oh, I remember I was in Sweden and I had this very rice, Persian rice, and the lady had put flower petals over the top of it. And I'd never had that. And I had that once. And I met somebody recently in Kenya and I talked to him about that. And he said, yes, our ladies always do dress the rice beautifully. So then I would know if I see it again, as a picture from spirit, I'd say, was your person from Persia or Iran?
Oh, that's very, you're using good reference points there.
Yes, culturally, we have to try and reach outside ourselves. And names, because we all have a version of John or a Peter, especially with the continent. And I remember years ago, I was in Denmark and I was full flow in this message. And I said to the lady, I've got the name Peter. What is the Danish equivalent of Peter? And she said, Peter. And everybody laughed. But somebody the other day, I got him to give me a message as part of his mentoring with me. And he had a name and he said, it's something Bert at the end, something Bert. Now, he could have said it's Albert, it's whatever. And I said, that's very interesting because the man you've just given me was born in Germany and his name was Norbert. And anybody who didn't know German names wouldn't know that. And he's in America and he got that last part of the name and that's all he had to do. And I knew. But he was gutsy to have said it. And I promise anybody, if you want to be mediums, you've got to be a bit gutsy. You've got to dare to say something. You must be willing to be wrong to get it right.
Do you know what? It's so funny, that story, because it reminds me of the first time I went to Findlay, completely fearless, happy to jump up, and I was getting the best messages ever, and it was all going so well. Then the second time I don't know what happened. My ego took over. But it's funny because I do agree with that. And I can see that myself from when I've had successes and when I haven't. We're almost coming out of time. So I want to ask just a couple more things because you said that when you teach, there's 10 things that you normally get told, but you say a lot. I want to leave the listeners with a couple of last pearls of wisdom from you, final thoughts or lessons that you can share with us. Because there's a lot of people who are going to be thinking, Val, I want to be a medium. I want to tap into it. You know, maybe even a good question might be, other than just sitting down and asking to serve spirit, what advice would you give to people in those early stages as well? I'm trying to rinse the cloth of every last moment.
It's very difficult for me because what I found was if spirit had given you this ability, you can't let other people tell you, you've got to do it my way. You've got to do it the way I did it 40 years ago. You cannot. You need to be sure you're letting somebody guide you We're not to teach at people. We're not to tell them how we have to do it. So really the important thing is make sure that you're with somebody who you can trust. That's very important. Make sure that you go through a form of a discipline before you open up to spirit. So sit for 5 minutes meditating. Make the appointment in advance and say, don't just sit down and say, right, I'm ready. You know, better you should say to spirit at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to be ready at 7 o'clock tonight, and I hope you will be as well. Then in a respectful way, you've made an appointment and you've let spirit know that you will be on duty and you will be ready. This is purely my way. Others might say, oh, you don't have to do any of that. But all I want to do is, and I think most people I know who are developed, they say, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to do it wrong for them. When you've got your own checklist of personal disciplines, then you won't get things wrong, will you? And working with other people, it is always important that they'll give a response. Not, oh, yeah, okay, or maybe. No, yes, no, or I don't know. You can work with that in many ways, you see, as the medium. So you have to, if you like, feel your way into it, know what works for you, and in a respectful way, explain that to people who come as sitters or you're working in a group with. And you have to allow yourself sometimes to know you're going to have a good day and a bad day. It doesn't mean that when you think you had a bad day, it's the end of the world.
Oh, yes. When I've had a bad day at times, Val, I thought I'm giving up. No, but...
There's a reading I often read it out during classes. And it talks about, it's not about mediumship, but it covers everything. We are often left with a queer, divine dissatisfaction. It means in the depth of your soul, somewhere you think you've not done right or you've not been good enough. And all I say to anybody, after I have them working, I say, give yourself marks out of 10, 1 to 10. How did you think you did? And you have to learn to assess yourselves. Because if you let other people boost you, you'll let other people pull you down. And always, 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 after you've done anything, try and sit in a gentle meditation when you can with your guides. Ask your guides to guide you and let you know if you've done something right and how you could do it better next time.
I think, do you know what? That was the most beautiful and wonderful way to finish this. Val, if you do want to find out more about Val, she does have a website, which is internationalmedium.co.uk. Don't worry about remembering it. It will be in the show notes.
Val Williams Medium.
Yes. So I'll stick that into Google and you'll find it, no problem. Val, honestly, I could have spoken to you for so much longer. There were so many wonderful stories. I've been scribbling away as well. And, you know, there's so many pearls of wisdom. So on behalf of me and all of the Soul Sync audience, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Can I show my second book?
Yes, please do.
It's only been out a year and I'm so proud of it.
Oh, just go back a tiny bit. Oh, yes, right. So it's Val's book is Hello from the Other Side. Again, you can go to the show notes. I'll put down where to buy it from. And do you know what? I've got it myself and it is on my list of where it's actually coming with me next week when I go away, Val. I'm not lying.
Holiday, yes.
Yes. And also...
Can I just thank you? Can I thank you for having me on? Because the journey's been a long one. It's not been an easy one. I say that to anybody. It can be very lonely. But if you just help one person on this journey, something in you knows you're a good person. That's what I believe.
And I think that's a beautiful philosophy, Val. And I must admit, I am going to try and persuade you on behalf of, again, all the lovely listeners to come on again and talk about another subject a different time. But thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, dear.
Well, there we go. That's it for another week's edition of the Soul Sync podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As always, if you want to find out more about the Facebook page and all the other social links, they're all in the show notes. And also, if you want to get involved with the show, maybe you've got a guest suggestion, you might like to be on the podcast yourself, you might have a story you'd like to share, then just, again, go to the show notes where you'll find my email address. I'm Jason Paul. You've been listening to The Soul Sync. Until next week, a big goodbye.